So this afternoon, just doing a quick little video about some basic boat checks we can do before going afloat. Now, as we discussed yesterday, you'll find that at the moment in the UK, a lot of sailing clubs do not have safety boat available due to the current pandemic and the social distancing regulations. And for those who sail on the coastal sites, whilst you might still have the RNLI and the Coast Guard active as a last resort, those services are currently incredibly pressured along with the rest of the UK's emergency services. So we want to be as self-sufficient as possible, so when we go afloat, we have the best chance possible of bringing ourselves back to the shore safely. Now, as I've said before, one of the most common reasons that people need to be rescued while they're afloat is an equipment failure of some sort. So what we're going to do here is talk through some basic boat checks we can do before we go afloat to maximise our chance of getting back by ourselves in a safe way. So there's four main areas we're going to discuss this afternoon. We've got the hull of our boat, we've got the spars of our boat, we've got the ropes and the rigging of our boat, and finally we've got our sails. So the hull of our boat. Now, hopefully at the moment the hull of your boat does not look like the one in this picture. However, it's worth bearing in mind that the hull of our boat is what actually keeps us afloat, and it's what also connects a lot of the rest of our boat together. So we want to make sure it's in the best possible shape before we go afloat. Now, you may have left your boat securely and thought everything was fine last year. However, if you've not looked at your boat over the winter, you may find a few problems with it, so it is worth giving it a check the first time you visit it this year. We've got here the bow of a laser, and we can see where there's a bit of a chip out of the gunnel there, and we can also see there's a bit of wear starting to form on the bow. Now, this sort of damage can occur where people come into a pontoon a bit too quick and they bash the boat. However, damage to the bow of the boat and other areas of our boat in contact with trolley can happen over the winter, especially if the boat's not securely strapped down and the boat's wobbling a little bit in the wind. So it's worth just having a little check around your boat, around the bow, any other areas which rest on the trolley, and just under the transom at the back of the boat to make sure none of those areas have been damaged over the winter. It's also worth paying some attention to any old repairs we know about on our boat. Now, on this photo of the laser again, on the right we can see the mast step. Now that's got some fairly obvious damage to it which would need repairing. But on the left where we can see that rough circle, that appears to be an old fiberglass repair which is cracked again. So you may have thought last year you'd repaired your fiberglass where it had been damaged. However, over the winter, as the temperatures have changed and the boat's got hotter and colder, sometimes old repairs can crack, and so it's worth checking any old repairs to check they are still watertight. And with any fiberglass repairs, we want our boat to be dry and warm when we do them. So if you do notice something's wrong now, it's probably worth fixing it straight away, as your boat's probably fairly dry at the moment, as none has been saying for the last 6 weeks, and we've had some lovely warm weather recently to dry out the fiberglass. The bung. Please make sure your bung is in your boat before you go afloat. We all joke about this with all our friends all the time, I know we do. However, I'm sure most of us at some point, and I definitely have done this before, have forgotten to put our bung in before we go sailing. So please, it's a really simple one, every time you go sailing, make sure your bung is in your boat. Remember, some boats may have more. The bottom's bosun, those of you who've got a bit of a military or a cadet background, remember, used to have 4 bungs, so please do make sure all your bungs are in your boat. A little bit here, which doesn't really fit into any of the other areas we're going to talk about this afternoon, is our tiller UJ. So our tiller UJ is the bit which connects our tiller to our tiller extension. So I'm just drawing a circle around it here now. Now on some boats, that joint is a mechanical joint, so it's a fairly robust thing. However, on many boats, it's a rubber tendon, and that rubber will perish and crack over time. As soon as you start seeing cracks appear on it, that is the time to change it, because they can fail. If you're a windsurfer, you're probably used to changing the UJ on your windsurf board on an annual basis. It's a good check to regularly do on our boats as well to make sure our tiller UJ is secure. So about the spars of our boat here now. So the spars boat, we're talking about the mast, the boom, and any other poles. So there's a couple bits we can check. First, they've got no cracks. And the second is that any fittings are secure. So with those cracks, our spars flex over time, and particularly aluminium is prone over time to becoming weaker as it flexes. So around areas where you've got fittings, it's worth checking that no cracks have formed, or where your mast sleeve together again, a common area for sort of cracks to start forming as the metal weakens. Now with our fittings, the majority of our fittings are fitted to our spars using rivets. So I'm just going to circle these rivets here. I've got one there, and another one just there. Now these rivets, they do wobble very slightly over time as there's load on the bearing then there's not there, and slowly but surely those rivets will lose their grip. Now they can either widen the hole they're fixed into, or they can snap themselves. If you notice your rivets are coming loose, it's a 5-minute job to quickly change them to some fresh rivets, and then they're nice and secure again. It's a very common thing again. You're out sailing, a gust of wind hits you, and the rivets holding your main sheet on may fail. May not seem that much of a disaster. It is a quick fix if you're on shore, but when you're on the water, it can be a lot more difficult to sort out. So another good check to do regularly on our boats. To move on to our ropes, there's sort of 3 key points I want to reiterate here about our ropes now. So our ropes do wear out. Some things we can reasonably expect to buy for our boat and then not have to replace. However, our ropes are a consumable. I expect to regularly change ropes on boats here at the club, and it's worth bearing in mind you will need to regularly change them. And there are some areas of high wear. Now, our ropes can fail anywhere along their length, but there are some locations where our ropes are more prone to wear and tear, and it's worth giving those a bit of a regular check over. And what we've got here is a picture of rope where it's just starting to fray. It's looking like it's been a bit chewed, so it's obviously regularly getting wear on that area, and this is the first sign we should consider changing our ropes. If we don't do anything to this sort of wear, it will slowly over time develop until the outer sheath of the rope here is completely separated and it's exposed to the core of the rope. Now, depending on what this rope is used for, this could mean that our control lines won't run through the blocks so well, or the sheaves, and so we're not going to be able to control our boat effectively. Or if it's something like a halyard, it will massively reduce the strength of that halyard. So if your rope looks like this with its core exposed, it is definitely the time to be changing it. Now, a couple of the high risk areas for our ropes is anywhere they enter as far. So here we've got the bobble on the end of a halyard, and normally any sort of sign of wear or failure will appear just where that line is, about an inch or so before the bobble, where the halyard just goes inside the mast and then it turns to go down the mast. So it's worth regularly checking that area. Now, if you've got a nice long halyard, you may be able to get away with cutting a couple of inches off the end of your halyard and just moving the bobble up and shortening your halyard. However, if you've done that trick before to avoid having to replace a halyard, you may well need to replace your halyard so you can carry on sailing. And of course, at the other end of the halyard and many other lines where our ropes come out of the mast or the boom, you will find that they come through a little oval shaped area just like this one. And you can see there where the rope is butting up against the mast, and so that again is going to be an area of high wear. And should your halyard snap whilst you're out sailing at any point along it, you will find that the sail will fall down fairly quickly, and it's not something you can repair on the water normally, so it is worth paying a lot of attention to that halyard. And of course, we have to secure many of our lines with a simple clam cleat such as this one. Now, there's 2 ways we need to be careful of our clam cleat. The first is that it's not wearing out the actual rope itself, but actually with a lot of modern ropes which are very tough, very robust, you can actually start to wear out your clam cleat. So where those teeth grip the rope, just where I'm drawing this line here now, along that area there, we need to make sure our cleat is not wearing out as well, otherwise we find it just won't grip our rope as securely as it should. And while we're on the subject of our rigging our ropes, we'll look at a bit of wire rope here, and we can see here how the strands pulled out the ferrule. Now this presents 2 problems to us as we go sailing. The first is that we've severely weakened our wire there because it's no longer having all those strands taking all the load, but also those strands can be very sharp and they can give you a nasty cut. So if you've got one strand loose, I would advise you don't go sailing, and as soon as you get to sort of many strands like this loose, you've got a serious risk there, and you need to be changing that shroud, that forestay, wherever that wire is. To move forward now, we're going to talk quickly about our sails. The source of power for our boats. Obviously not in this photo, there's not much wind there, so I don't know how much power those sails are generating. However, normally they are what power us. Now, if you've not been to your boat all winter and you've stored your sails in there, there's a couple of problems which could have arisen. You may have had a mouse or another small rodent move in and make a nest within your sails, which obviously will be a very, very obvious thing to see. However, if your sails have been damp over the winter, particularly from fresh water, the sails can slowly start weakening as they sort of start rotting and disintegrating. So please do check the full integrity of your sails, especially if you left them in the boat or winter. If you do find a mouse nest, it's not the most pleasant of things to find in there, but please do make sure you clean that boat thoroughly after you've removed the nest. A couple of the common ones we also find on sails is when they've got a window, so particularly on jibs or on some mainsails you'll find there's a small window in the sail. Now these are plastic and they do wear out quicker than the rest of the sail. So we can see here, it's where my finger's pointing on the screen, a hole is formed in that there. Now it's not a disaster at this point, but we don't want that to get any worse. So if you've not got any sail repair tape, which can be a great way to repair small holes in your sails, a bit of gaffer tape will work on these plastic panels as a short-term solution. The other area of our sails which will commonly fail is where they attach, whether that's the head of our sail, where our main halyard attaches or our jib halyard, or whether it's further down where our cunningham might attach, or in this particular photo, where the tack of our jib secures. Now there should be a loop of fabric going from, well, I've just started drawing this line now, down through this loop, and then back up onto our jib again. Now that's obviously failed here along with the wire, but it will make it much more difficult for you to control your boat if your sail's not rigged properly. So please, again, just pay a little bit of attention to your sails, check for any wear and tear, and have a look at fixing them if you need to. So there's just a few tips here we can talk about and we can think about to help us as we go forwards. Please make sure your boat is suitable for going afloat. If it's based at a club and they've got a bosun, someone like myself, please do ask us. We are more than happy at the moment to give advice about how you can help yourself and how you can fix your boat. Otherwise, there are plenty of video tutorials out on YouTube, and various manufacturers have released information as well, such as Topper and RS, about how you can care for your boat. So please check your equipment before you go out, and if in doubt, please don't go out until you've fixed the problems you've identified.